Here we go. Good evening. The July meeting of the Washington County Quorum Court is called to order. Judge Woods is attending a NACO meeting and has asked me to get this meeting started tonight. The first item of business is to elect a chair for this meeting. I'll entertain a motion. J.P. Simon?
I nominate Lance Johnson.
Second.
Got a motion and a second for Lance Johnson. Are there other motions? Okay, all in favor of me chairing this meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Everybody did that quickly. J.P. Ushery is going to lead us in a prayer and a pledge.
Dear Lord, we are grateful for this county and we're grateful for this nation that we live in. We just ask that you give us great wisdom tonight. And Lord, just may things go smoothly and may we have an attitude of listening and learning and help us to do the county business the way that it needs to be done. And we thank you for that. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Miss Myra, I'm going to have to be on. Item 3 on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. I'll entertain a motion to adopt.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion by Justice Duncan, second by Justice Dennis to adopt the agenda. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion carries. Item 4 is preliminary motions. Are there any preliminary motions? Justice Duncan.
I move that ordinances and resolutions be read by title only.
Is there a second? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, no. Okay, all motions will be read by, all ordinances will be read by title only. Item 5 is the public comment period. At this time, we will have citizen comments. County Ordinance 2016-66 sets a total of 15 minutes for public comment. Each citizen will be limited to 3 minutes. When you're called upon to speak, please state your name and where you live. Are there any citizens that wish to comment at this time? Line up. Hang on just a second. The timekeeper tonight will be Patrick Deacons, and Patrick and Miss Myra are controlling the microphones.
Good evening, JPs. My name is Mac Mayfield. I live at 980 Rocky Lane in Fayetteville. I wanted to comment about the ordinance putting the jail on the ballot. I'm glad that it's on the ballot. I think it's something that we should all vote on. I think it's also something that we all need to be informed about. And I'm very worried about the operating costs for the jail. Now, I've heard 1,000 new beds, and if I add 1,000 to the 700 existing, I get 1,700. 1,700 over 700 is 2.4. If our operating budget for the jail is going to be 2.4 times as big as it is now, the 17 million we spend every year, it'll be over $40 million. So I think that a real close evaluation of the operating cost needs to be made so that people can vote and make an informed decision with all the costs in hand. Thank you very much.
I'm Ashley Hicks from Fayetteville. My younger brother has severe schizophrenia, and because of this, he is unfortunately irregular within the jail system. I care very deeply about this issue. Honestly, this is a very hard thing to do, to come up here and talk to 15 complete strangers in a room full of people about this problem in my family. There's a lot of negative associations with mental illnesses. Just last week, there was a statement made in this room that people with mental illness were better off in jail than in the street. And to that, I say no, they're better off in treatment. It's difficult even for me, a nurse who can halfway navigate systems, to help my brother because the resources needed to do that just aren't there. I recognize that if it's hard for me, it must be exponentially harder for other families in our community. We're at a fork in the road, and you all have a unique opportunity to create services our community desperately needs. What angers me about the whole jail discussion is that we have solutions to work towards a vibrant future community. We have the money to make it happen, but we lack leaders with the work ethic to pull it off. I've come to the realization that our representatives don't serve us. And I may be up here with tears in my eyes and my voice shaking because I do have a very soft heart, but I also have a very strong backbone. And all of these things have shared tonight have led me to the decision to run for the District 15 JP seat. Our community deserves better. Thank you.
Good evening, Josh Moody, Fayetteville. I'm reading tonight, so I'll stay on track. Thank you all for your service to the county. I believe you have above average intelligence, want to serve the greater good, and are capable of coming up with creative solutions to jail overcrowding. But you haven't done so even though the solutions were presented 2 years ago. There are many reasons why jail expansion makes no sense right now. A sales tax increase during this period of inflation is most harmful to the most vulnerable people, as is pretrial detention. Incarcerating more people during a worker shortage will further harm businesses. Increasing sales tax will not lure new investments, businesses, and high-paying jobs into our county. Nearly tripling our incarceration rate, while it's already higher than the national average, will not solve our justice issues. One of our judges recently said implementing programs now makes more sense before we can even know if expanding the jail is necessary. We still have millions of dollars of federal funding available for these programs, and they won't even cost that much. The CJCC is working on pretrial solutions that would cost thousands, not millions. This would help expedite lower-level cases, who typically shouldn't be incarcerated anyway, and or release them pending adjudication. A mental health court would cost less than $1 million. This reduces recidivism and the tax burden. At least a third of our detainees have diagnosed mental illness, and another third go undiagnosed. Jail is not appropriate for them. The sheriff doesn't want to be in the mental health business, and I can't blame him for that. It is not his fault we are here tonight. That's on you. A sobering center would cost roughly $1.5 million to open and save us about $4.5 million annually. That's a no-brainer. Compromise. We need program space. It could be at the jail or maybe somewhere else. As a high-ranking officer recently said, detainees do well while they have their hands held. People need structure and purpose. Let's invest in them and save us all money in the long run. I've heard you talk about building consensus. That does not equal exerting power. What you have steamrolled through is the opposite of consensus building. Mass incarceration starts locally. You all have a say in whether or not Washington County will lead in making fiscally sensible and humane policy to reduce our role in this, or whether we become a bigger part of the problem. Do you want to be remembered for moving justice forward, or for a $1/8 of $1 billion Band-Aid? Part of this proposal includes $28.5 million for juvenile court expansion. Last fall, that was priced at $4 to $5 million. I also recall the $23 million COVID jail expansion proposal from the spring. 5 plus 23 equals 28. Add $0.5 million for inflation. That's genius, but deceptive and untransparent. I think you are hedging your bets in case the 9-figure expansion fails in November. This way you can still get what you want. I mentioned this theory the other day and was assured it wouldn't be legal, but this administration has played fast and loose with legalities for some time now, so I wouldn't be surprised. An open conversation about an overall plan is the right way to do this. Deliberate, compromise, problem solve, These concepts have been severely lacking in recent years. Thank you, and have a good evening.
Hi, my name is Isabel. I live here in Fayetteville. One second, sorry. My phone's not opening. There you go. Okay. It is my understanding that this sales tax to expand the jail is being proposed primarily due to overcrowding. This is not a problem unique to Washington County. This is a nationwide issue, despite data that shows declining crime rates both nationwide as well as locally. According to Penal Reform International and the Prison Policy Initiative, jail overcrowding is almost always the result of poor criminal justice policy. Too many people are held for too long pre-trial. Too many individuals with substance use and mental health disorders are incarcerated instead of treated. Too many people are held for too long on misdemeanors or other low-level charges. Too many people are incarcerated over minor parole or probation violations. Over 76% of people held by local jails are not there because they've been convicted of a crime, but because they can't afford cash bail. Incarceration disproportionately impacts low-income individuals. In lieu of jail expansion, both Penal Reform International and the Prison Policy Initiative suggest government's focus on reforming pretrial detention policies. They suggest investing in non-custodial alternatives to detention both pre- and post-trial, issuing citations instead of making arrests, considering income when setting cash bail, releasing people on recognizance, using unsecured bonds, and offering pretrial services, expanding access and increasing funding to mental health and substance abuse programs and other treatment options, establishing a network of support for people released from prison to help reduce rates of recidivism. These are all statistically proven solutions to the problem of jail overcrowding put forward by the people who study this very issue. Jail expansion is not one of those solutions. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Reverend Angela Tyler Williams. I live in Fayetteville and am a member of District 7. I'm an ordained Presbyterian pastor, so I want to bring this to you from Isaiah. The Spirit of the Lord God is upon me because the Lord has anointed me. He has sent me to bring good news to the oppressed, to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives and release to the prisoners. These are the words from the prophet Isaiah in the Christian Old Testament. These are the same words that Jesus said when he was a child, telling people in the temple what his life's calling is. As an ordained Christian pastor, I look to scriptures like these as a guide to my ethics, to my morality, what is right, what is wrong. I bring this up because I know there are a good number of you on this court who share my faith. When I look at the ordinance to expand the jail and the juvenile court, I don't see the Spirit of God. I don't see this county proclaiming liberty to the captives and release to the prisoners. As you have noted, this court has already studied and received findings for ways to care for our neighbors, the residents of Washington County. Right now, Washington County is waging a war on the poor because people are in jail now because they cannot pay their bail. I believe in the land of the free and the home of the brave, and Washington County does not seem to be the land of the free if the only solution to the problems of substance addiction, poverty, homelessness, and no jobs or low-paying jobs is to throw people in jail. We are more creative. We can dream bigger. I believe in you, and I believe in us. Let us follow Jesus as we proclaim liberty to the captives and release to the prisoners. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Danielle Howerton, resident of District 6 on Electric Avenue in Springdale. In addition to working full-time as a construction estimator, I'm a social work graduate student and a behavioral health intern at Community Clinic. I grew up in Carroll County, where my dad has served on the Quorum Court since I was a teenager. After years of attending those general and committee meetings and tagging along as he met with constituent after constituent, I'm convinced that local government is where individuals can make the most meaningful political change. So when I moved to Washington County last year, I began working to catch up on the history of the issues that were recurring themes on Washington County Quorum Court agendas. Obviously, crowding at the county detention center was high on that list, as it's been mentioned by the sheriff since, 2014? By By combing through agendas, transcripts, recordings of the meetings, I learned that this issue was brought to the Quorum Court's attention years ago, and that citizens had paid tens of thousands of dollars for a team of researchers from an independent nonprofit organization to analyze the situation and to provide recommendations. And what they delivered in August 2020 seems like it was worth the investment. The 123-page mixed methods report is painstakingly thorough. By my count, it includes 15 recommendations that are all supported by data mined from 5 years of corrections records, interviews with stakeholders, including several of you, and literature reviews. What I did not find in the report was a recommendation to spend $100 million in order to add on to the county detention center. It's not there. The closest thing I could find was on page 96, where they introduced the idea of a regional facility that could be potentially located in Washington County that would be co-funded by surrounding counties and municipalities. Doesn't matter. But it wasn't their only recommendation, their strongest recommendation, or even their Plan A recommendation. So as a citizen who is very familiar with county governance in Arkansas, I am absolutely baffled as to why the only related proposal on the agenda is the county jail expansion funded by a sales tax hike. I personally paid for a copy of the report for each of you in case you have misplaced your copy, which is the most gracious explanation I can provide for your neglect of its recommendations. I am requesting that my representative, Ms. Ecke, contact me to explain her apparent support of the actions of this court. My cell phone number is 870-480-6463. Please call or respond to my previous emails to set up a time to talk. Thank you.
Okay, I'll talk fast. My
Chair, I'd like to suspend the rules and extend the time so the public comment can be made. Okay, I'm only gonna accept the motion if it's time certain. 1, 2, 3, 4, make it 12 minutes. We have a motion and a second to expend the time for 12 minutes. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion passes. We'll extend the period for 12 minutes. Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you. My name is Katie. I live on Lynn Street in Springdale. I'm curious why we want to spend so much money expanding the county jail. For a very solidly middle-class American, it feels like an obscene amount of money to spend. Yes, I can. My Christian faith values redemption and freedom. What if we use that money to go upstream and get curious and ask questions? How can we come alongside and support people before crimes are committed? Is it mental health support? Drug rehab support? How can we better support them after they've paid their time so they do not end up needing a jail bed again? I don't have all the answers. There have been lots of creative proposals given here even just tonight. I guess there's a bunch in here as well. But I know that we have a lot of really smart, creative, imaginative people in our community who we could ask for help. And asking for help is a true sign of leadership. Let's be good stewards of our money and use it to help people be free. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Aaron Killingsworth, District 3. I'm going to cut out some of what I was going to say because people have already said a lot of it. I'm here to talk about the tax on the jail as well. So I read the report that's here, and I won't quote from it a ton, but here are the big takeaways that I saw. A quarter of the average daily population at the jail has failure to appear as their most serious charge. The high pretrial bond is listed as one of the major drivers of overcrowding in the jail, and this is especially troubling when there's no formal bail schedule within the county. Bail is set by whoever the judicial officer is presiding over that case. And 90% of the cases are end up being assigned to a public defender, which shows that these are people who don't have the means to defend themselves a lot of time. Couple all that with the fact that there are no formal pretrial services within the county, and it paints a really bleak picture where we have people sitting in jail waiting on their court date, where they will be, assisted by, they'll be assisted by an overworked public defender who themselves does not have access to a lot of resources. So I urge you guys to actually follow through on the recommendations that are in this report, of which there are many. And I'm going to quote the report here, where it says, in order to create a system that is fair to those accused but awaiting trial, Washington County, at a minimum, must address the disparities created through a bond determination system that does not take the ability to pay into account. The report stated multiple times that we need evidence-based practices within the judicial system, as well as the need to invest in robust pretrial services that divert people away from jail and addresses the root causes of their detention. The report noted that Washington County is resource-rich, but we are doing a poor job of connecting people who need those resources when they need them most. As a member of this community, I do not like the idea of spending tax dollars and using those tax dollars to detain more people when there are solutions that we have yet to try. So rather than taxing people to expand the jail, it seems like a better use of our time and money would be to address some of these serious issues outlined in the report and use some of the recommendations in it. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jane. I'm a nurse from Springdale. I wanted to ask you to not pay for this with a sales tax. Sales tax hits the poorest people the hardest, and other forms of tax would be much better. I do not want the jail expansion at all. I've been part of this end of isolation tour that's coming to Greenland tomorrow to the Air Force Museum. They're going to do a play. Arkansas has a really high solitary confinement rate, higher than any other state in the U.S. We also already have one of the highest sales tax rates here. We had some friends visit recently, and they couldn't believe it's already over 11% sales tax here in Washington County. So I just wanted to let you know that.
Thank you. Next speaker.
My name is Ann Britton, and I live in JP District 10. And I am here to speak in favor of the jail expansion. We are in a crime crisis right now. By the time you build this jail, we're going to need a bigger jail. That's just the facts. We don't live in a world of unicorns and lollipop trees. We're living in reality. And the crime that's being brought in across the border is criminal. These people, when they cross the border, already are criminals. I know a lot of them are escaping harsh conditions and so on, but that doesn't give them the right to be here illegally. We're all going to pay for it. Everyone will pay for it. I'm in favor of allowing the people to vote for this. Let them decide if they see the need. Because I can tell you in other cities, just the Waukesha event in the Christmas parade, that man had been released and re-released so many times I cannot remember. He should have been in jail the night that he killed and mowed down all those children. I have a friend who was a nurse at the Waukesha Hospital that night. She told me that literally the halls were streaming with blood. What you reward, you get more of. If you continue to be lenient and ask for no cash bail and you just give people a slap on the wrist, you're going to get more of what you don't want. We need to have law and order. We need to have justice for all people. But you've got to give the police officers in the sheriff's department, the people that work there, the tools they need to keep we the citizens safe. And that is your priority. Mental health is not an issue to be addressed by this body. Charity begins in the church, not at the Quorum Court. Thank you very much.
Okay. Item 6 on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. The minutes were emailed in the agenda packet. Are there any additions or corrections? Seeing none, the minutes are approved. Item 7 is the county judge's report. The disposal of county property report is in your packet. At this time, I'll open the floor to nominations to the Board of Equalization. Ron Stinchcomb, who had put his name in for consideration, has removed his name from consideration. Robin Grisso has submitted her name for consideration. Ms. Grisso has been a licensed real estate appraiser in Washington County since 2006. As a reminder of the 2 appointments by the Quorum Court, state law requires at least one of the appointees be a licensed real estate appraiser. But if a licensed real estate appraiser is not available or willing to serve, the County Quorum Court may appoint a licensed real estate broker. If a licensed real estate broker is not available or willing to serve, the County Quorum Court may appoint a licensed real estate salesperson. If a licensed real estate salesperson is not available or willing to serve, the Quorum Court may appoint any qualified elector of the county. Do I have a motion for Ms. Grisco? Justice Ecke.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I nominate Robin Grisso to the Equalization Board for approval.
Is there a second? Willie Lemming seconded. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Ms. Grisco is appointed to that board. The next item is the Bar Association has submitted the following names: Tim Watson, Coleman Taylor, Renee Randall, and Colin Johnson to serve as members of the Washington County Library Board. I need a motion to approve these appointments. You have a motion, is there a second? Any discussion? All in favor, aye? Aye. Those opposed, no. Those 4 individuals are appointed to the Washington County Library Board. Item 8, the first item under new business, is an ordinance ratifying a conditional use permit recommended for approval by the Planning and Zoning Board for POPS Cato. Justice Wilson.
Mr. Chairman, I move suspension of the rules and moving this to the second reading.
We have a motion to suspend the rules and move it to second reading.
He read it. He read it. He read it.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second to move it to a second reading. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. There was a public hearing with the Planning Commission in June on this issue. There was no objection to the CUP. The appeal period has expired. No one's appealed, no one's spoken against it.
Were you going to read it the second time, sir?
An ordinance ratifying a conditional use permit. An ordinance ratifying a conditional use permit recommended for approval by the Planning and Zoning Board for POPS Cato.
Mr. Chairman, I move the suspension of the rules and moving it to the third and final reading.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to suspend the rules, move this to a third and final reading. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the question is on the adoption of this ordinance. Ms. Myra, will you call? Oh, excuse me. Is there any public comment on this issue?
My name's Terry Davis Beaupre. Pardon me?
I don't think, I don't think we've done the third reading.
We need the third reading.
Yes.
An ordinance ratifying a conditional use permit recommended for approval by the Planning and Zoning Board for POPS Cato.
Mr. Chairman, I move to pass this ordinance.
Okay, we have a motion to suspend the rules. or
Pass.
To pass this ordinance. Is there any discussion? Justice Lemming?
No.
Well, then turn your mic off. Okay, if there's no discussion, the question is on the adoption of an ordinance ratifying a conditional use permit recommended for approval by the Planning and Zoning Board for Pops Cato. No, public comment.
Now?
Go ahead, ma'am.
My name's Terry Davis Beaupre. I live on Beech Nut Lane in rural Washington County. I want to say that I was heartened to see this come to the planning board, and only because of the procedural process that was enacted. This was, I think last month I brought this up. This was a horse barn supposedly that a person was building on Cato Springs Road. He was in contact with the planning department early on. They told him that unless this horse barn was changed to a commercial venture, that he would not have to entertain a CUP process. He admitted during the planning committee meeting, planning board meeting, that he was told that by the planning department, and yet it took a neighbor calling the planning department and complaining that the horse barn was not in fact a horse barn. It was becoming a commercial venture. And so, like I said, I'm heartened that this has come before you, and while you may say that there were no objections to this CUP, there were 3 members of the planning board that voted against it. That's all I have.
Thank you. Other public comment? Okay, we'll vote on the question. Ms. Myra?
Patrick Deakins? Yes. Lisa Ecke? Yes. Sam Duncan? Yes. Chandra Washington? Yes. Eva Madison? Robert Dennis? Yes. Suki Hires? Yes. Evelyn Rio Stafford? Yes. Willie Lemming? Yes. Jim Wilson? Yes. Butch Pond? Yes. Lance Johnson?
Yes.
Shannon Marty? Yes. Sean Simons? Bill Usry.
motion is adopted. Item 9 is an ordinance ratifying a conditional use permit recommended for approval by the Planning and Zoning Board for Hydra Solar. Mr. Wilson?
Mr. Chairman, I move suspension of the rules and moving this to the second reading.
Do we have a second? Okay, we have a motion and a second to move it to a second reading. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Okay, an ordinance ratifying a conditional use permit recommended for approval by the Planning and Zoning Board for Hydra Solar.
Mr. Chairman, I move suspension of the rules and moving this to the third and final reading.
We have a motion, is there a second? Second. We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules, move this to the third and final reading. Is there any discussion? I gotta read it first. Let me read it and then we'll discuss it. An ordinance ratifying a conditional use permit recommended for approval by the Planning and Zoning Board, Hydra Solar. Discussion. J.P. Pond.
Do we have anyone here this evening that could tell us a little bit about what Hydra Solar is?
Hello, my name is Peter Davis, and I work for NextEra Energy Resources, who is the sole owner of the Hydra Solar project. So this project is situated on approximately 35 acres between two parcels that are combined about approximately 95 acres. This will be a ground-mounted solar farm. The height of these solar panels will be no more than approximately 8 feet in height. The intention of this, excuse me, the intention of this solar project is to sell the energy locally under Arkansas's state net energy metering program. So essentially, this project will provide energy savings to large business owners or various other business entities that have load that or high energy amounts of usage that they would like to see some sort of savings on compared to, say, Ozarks Electric Cooperative. A little bit about our company. We're based out of Florida. We're one of the largest energy companies in the United States. We develop solar and other various renewable energy sources, as well as own various transmission lines, utility companies, and nuclear power plants throughout the United States. I'd be happy to take any questions that anybody might have.
Justice Dennis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Very simple little question, probably shouldn't even be asked, but I'm curious about it. Farmington High School has built one. Is that one of yours by chance?
No, I believe that was done by Today's Power or something
I get
like
to
that,
see
yeah.
it every day. The one thing I've noticed is, how do you mow the grass underneath the solar panels? Because it's, I've noticed it, and it's not being mowed. Of course, it shouldn't have to be mowed today, as dry as it is, but at the same time, it is growing, and I don't know how they get to it. So, kind of curious about that. How do you maintain it?
Yeah. So for these, of course, so for these solar panels or solar projects that we own, we generally hire the labor locally just to mow the grass in between the rows as well as underneath the rows. We're financially incentivized to mow the grass, because if grass grows up underneath the panels and then through the panels and then it starts shading the panels themselves, they start affecting production. And then when we get lower production, our investment on this project takes a hit. In addition, we're also contractually obligated with the energy buyer to meet a minimum amount of energy every year. And if we're not, then we get hit with liquidated damages by the buyer. So we're financially motivated to keep this project up and running, producing the energy that we said we would in the contract with the energy buyer. There's various other things that we've done as well. Sheep, for example. We use them. I mean, obviously not goats or cows or anything like that, but sheep just face downwards and eat, and kind of take that work out from us. So. Mm-hmm. You're welcome. Happy to take any other questions.
Thank you, sir. Justice Pond?
Yes. Thank you. Do you have the list of buyers for this particular project?
No, not at this stage, but we are pursuing various other buyers, or potential buyers, I should say. It is a little bit of an early stage at this time.
Have you received grant money for your project to build, for construction of this project?
We don't receive any grant money. There is a federal investment tax credit that's provided on all solar projects throughout the U.S., but that is primarily the main form of the incentive or any incentive that we receive.
Thank you.
Other questions? Seeing them, we have to take public comment. I think we need a motion. Did we ever get a motion? Justice Wilson?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we pass this ordinance.
We have a motion. Is there a second? Second. Any discussion by the court? Public comment. Seeing no public comment, Ms. Myra?
Patrick Deakins.
Yes.
Lisa Ecke. Sam Duncan. Chandra Washington. Eva Madison. Robert Dennis. Suki Hires. Evelyn Rio Stafford. Willie Lemming. Jim Wilson. Butch Pond. Lance Johnson. Shannon Marty. Sean Simons. Bill Usry. Pass.
Thank you. Thank you.
Item number 10 on the agenda is the consent agenda. I'm going to have J.P. Deakins read these ordinances.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item number 1 on the consent agenda is an ordinance recognizing additional revenue in the amount of $60,000 in the juvenile court grant fund and appropriating $60,000 from the juvenile court budget for 2022. Item number 2, an ordinance recognizing and appropriating revenue in the amount of $101,109.24 in the road department budget for 2022. Item number 3, an ordinance anticipating additional revenue of $399,996 in the drug court grant fund and appropriating the amount of $399,996 from the drug court grant fund to the SAMHSA 2022-2023 grant fund budget for 2022. Item number 4, an ordinance recognizing additional revenue in the amount of $10,000 in the AOC Juvenile Court Grant Fund and appropriating $10,000 from the AOC Juvenile Court Grant Fund to various line items in the Juvenile Court Grant Fund budget for 2022. Item number 5, an ordinance deappropriating surplus amounts from full-time salaries for various departments and restoring to unappropriated reserves as required by the 2022 budget controls for the second quarter of 2022. Item number 6, an ordinance appropriating $3,972.84 from the unappropriated reserves to the general fund, to the various line items of the tax collector budget, and $18,445.50 from the unappropriated reserves of the collector's automation fund for 2022. Item number 7, an ordinance recognizing and anticipating additional revenue in the amount of $163,758.58 and appropriating $163,758.58 from the unappropriated reserves in the general fund to various line items in the sheriff and jail budgets for 2022.
Do I have a motion?
I make a motion we pass the consent agenda.
Got a motion? We have a motion and a second to pass the consent agenda. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, is there any public comment? Seeing none, the question is on the adoption of the consent agenda. Ms. Myra?
Patrick Deakins? Yes. Lisa Ecke? Yes. Sam Duncan? Yes. Chandra Washington? Yes. Eva Madison? Yes. Robert Dennis? Yes. Suki Hires? Yes. Evelyn Rio Stafford? Yes. Willie Lemming? Yes. Jim Wilson? Yes. Butch Pond?
Yes.
Lance Johnson?
Yes.
Shannon Marty? Yes. Sean Simons? Bill Usry?
Yes.
Pass?
The consent agenda is adopted. Item 12 on the agenda. I skipped 11. I wanted to. Let's go back and do 11 first. An ordinance creating the law clerk position in the Circuit Clerk 7 budget for 2022 and appropriating $40,000 to the Circuit Clerk Budget 7, Court 7 budget for 2022. J.P. Ecke.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This request comes from Judge Taylor's office. She's requesting a new position, a full-time law clerk to assist with management of criminal and domestic violence involving children dockets. She is looking to hire a lawyer licensed in the state of Arkansas, skilled in legal research and writing, well-versed on constitutional issues, and familiar with case management and jury and bench trial procedures. The appropriation for this is $40,000, which includes benefits and is for the remainder of the year. This ordinance passed the Personnel and Budget and Finance Committee with a due pass recommendation. I believe we all recognize this request from Judge Taylor could be a contributing factor in gaining forward momentum with our criminal justice issues by providing key research and metrics relating to detainees in our jail. I make a motion to pass.
We have a motion to pass. Is there a second? We have a motion and a second to pass this ordinance. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, public.
Wait. Justice Pond.
Justice Pond.
There we go. When I first saw this, I realized this is one of the things we need. These judges need more staff to help them work with to get something done about this overcrowd at the jail. It's just one of many solutions. Thank you, I'm glad this has come forward. I'm proud to vote for it.
Seeing none, the question is on the adoption of an ordinance creating the law clerk position in Circuit Court 7 budget for 2022 and appropriating $40,000 to the Circuit Court 7 budget for 2022. Ms. Myra.
Patrick Deakins. Lisa Ecke. Sam Duncan. Shonda Washington. Eva Madison. Robert Dennis. Suki Hires. Evelyn Rio Stafford. Willie Lemming. Jim Wilson. Butch Pond. Lance Johnson. Shannon Marty. Sean Simons. Bill Usry. Pass.
Item 12, an ordinance approving the transfer of certain real property of Washington County to the city of Fayetteville for fire protection services. J.P. Deakins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As we've discussed in committees, this is a piece of property the county owns near the hospital, and we're wanting to transfer this to Fayetteville Fire so they can add coverage to their fire stations. I think Chief Harden's here tonight if we have questions for him, but to get the discussion going, I'd like to move passage of item number 10. Is it 3 readings? Okay, I'd like to move passage of item number. Does it go through 3 readings? Yeah. I'd like to suspend the rules and move it to a second reading. Three readings.
I gotta read it. You gotta tell me. I don't know.
Vote first, vote.
This is an ordinance approving the transfer.
Vote first. Take a vote. Did he read it the first time? I think so, yeah.
We voted the first time.
No, we need to vote. Gotta vote.
We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules and take this to the second reading. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to suspend the rules and move it to a third and final reading.
We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules and move it to a third and final reading. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? The motion passes. An ordinance approving the transfer of certain real property of Washington County to the city of Fayetteville for fire protection services.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we pass item number 12.
We have a motion and a second to pass item number 12. Is there any additional discussion? Public comment? Justice Dennis?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Number one, how large of a piece of land is it? Is it a half an acre, an acre?
It's about an
Legal
acre.
descriptions there. Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
It's roughly an acre. It is about an acre.
About an acre?
Mhm.
Okay. That's prime real estate. On my district, 1/3 of my people are Fayetteville residents. 2/3 of my people are Farmington and Prairie Grove residents. So the Fayetteville residents understand exactly how they're getting to benefit from this. The other 2/3 are saying, if we as a county own that property, what are we getting for it? And we're getting nothing for it for the rest of the county. So explain to me why you've already got the vote won, so it's kind of a moot point. But if you'll explain it, then the people who are concerned about that will at least hear from you why they should be happy about it.
Well, I'd be happy to explain
Thank
to
you.
you. So as you know, the fire department, or the fire service in general, it requires a lot of people, in order to fight fire. Any fire of any size, we all work together. So I don't know where your district is exactly, but I'd be willing to bet we respond into your district quite regularly with our fire apparatus. Which we don't receive funding to do. It's just a partnership. We work together because we know that the volunteer department that covers you will come into our area when we need it, or the paid, whichever it may be. So we work together. So that's one way. The other way is this particular station is a unique station. It's going to have all of our urban search and rescue and our hazmat team in it. So the hazmat team we provide, the city of Fayetteville, provides hazmat coverage to the entire county. The county doesn't have a hazmat team. The county helps us with funding. They give us equipment. And then in exchange, we provide personnel, apparatus, stations, all of the supporting costs that go along with that to respond into the county. So that's what we provide to the county, and that's what they'll be receiving for that.
Much because you explained it very well, and that would not have been said had I not challenged it. So thank you for the explanation. The people in Farmington, Prairie Grove area, they thank you also.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Justice Rio Stafford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm probably in favor of this. I had a constituent reach out with a few questions about it. I wanted to thank you for your email this week, kind of explaining how this would help provide more coverage for the city of Fayetteville. Could you sort of, just for the audience, could you kind of explain how moving the station, I guess this would replace the station over on Garland, and how moving that would help provide more coverage for the city?
Okay, so we strive to meet what's called NFPA 1710. Inside of that standard, it requires that we get on the scene within 4 minutes with the first due apparatus, and then we get there within 10 minutes for the remaining apparatus, which we put 17 people on a fire scene for the majority of our fires. Much of the city meets this. Where it doesn't is right here in the center of Fayetteville. There's $313 million in property that is outside of that coverage. Included in that property is 58 different businesses that employ over 460 people. So it's an important part of our city that is not covered as good as it should be. And that's the reason behind it, is why we need it in that particular location. And the reason that we came to the county wasn't just because we wanted to get something for free or anything like that. There was literally no property available. I've been working on this since 2016. I've reached out to the judge twice. This was the second time that I was pleading that he please sell us this property. And we couldn't find anything. And then after we finally did get him to agree to move forward with it, there was just one hurdle after another, the VA being the biggest hurdle. It took us, I've been working on them since November, and they finally agreed. So there's a deed restriction on the property. It can't be used for anything but a hospital. They've agreed to extend that to include a fire station, so.
Great. And just out of curiosity, what would happen to the old station on Garland once this was constructed and in use?
Well, we're going to keep it, and we're going to continue watching the coverage. I mean, right now, it wouldn't be sensible to keep them both in service because it has a very small coverage area. But we're going to keep it there. We may put equipment in it. I don't know what we will do with it exactly, but yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
I might add, we're not
Yes.
reducing any of the coverage in doing that. So that area is still going to be covered just as good as it is currently.
Oh,
So,
and actually, this station would be bigger than the one on Garland.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, much bigger.
Okay, thank you.
Justice Lemming.
Brad, how many stations does that make now?
That'll be 9.
That'll be 9. And it costs approximately $1 million a year to employ
the employees in every station. That'd be 9 million y'all spend every year, roughly.
Well, it's actually 1.2 million, and we'll have two companies there,
Okay,
so it'll be
so-
$2.4 million is what that'll cost you.
Every year, so it's
Every year.
Okay. And I want to thank you and the city council, because in the past, there've been a lot of fire chiefs and city council says the line is where our fire trucks stop. And if it wasn't for you, for the rural areas and the city allowing that to happen, you wouldn't be able to come out and help us. And people don't realize that. And that's very important for y'all to come help the small communities, because volunteerism is going away, and it's coming to be a paid departments all around. And I just want to thank you for pushing that, and the city for allowing us to work together and to be able to do all that. So, thank you.
Thank you for recognizing that, and I'll pass it along.
Thank you.
Public comment. If you've got a question, Justice Pond?
I have a comment. I just also wanted to express my appreciation to the City of Fayetteville Fire Department for the mutual assist agreements with every fire department that's their neighbor, as far as I know. I did get one time I was supposed to be a volunteer on one of the rural fire departments, and it was a hot summer day. I wasn't in proper turnout gear, and I was washed down a little bit by one of them. But I've nearly forgotten all about that. But thank you.
Public comment.
My name is Dawn Cannon, and thank you, Quorum, for the opportunity to
Ma'am,
speak.
pull the mic up close.
My name is Dawn Cannon, and I live in Fayetteville, just outside on District 14, and thank you for the opportunity to speak for public comment. And quite often, as we've seen earlier tonight, depending on what the issues are, people get up and are really quick to be ugly and not give accolades where accolades are due. And as far as the fire department goes, regarding JP Dennis's first question, since February, I have gotten very active in the county and community and searched out to learn more about what goes on. And I've had the privilege of doing 2 ride-alongs with the Fayetteville Police Department, as well as attending rural fire department meetings. And the 2 ride-alongs that I had the privilege of doing with the Police Department of Fayetteville, when 911 was called, the fire department, the ambulances, and the police showed up. And one of the things that the young policeman, who was very kind, intelligent, and just an awesome, patient human, he asked me what I learned from the first ride-along, and I said it was really surprising and pleasant to see how well the fire department and the police got along and worked with each other instead of being separate entities that they are. It was like they were one awesome team of people. And the rural fire departments especially don't run on a very low budget, and their rural fire department members who are called off in the middle of the night, like maybe Mr. JP Pond was when he got washed down, they don't get gas money to travel in the middle of the night when they get woken up, and quite often. And they're doing it because they want to help the community. And we are really lucky with the police department we have in Fayetteville, Arkansas, as well as how well the firemen came together and saw. And as a citizen in the county who had not been exposed to that kind of come-togetherness, it was a pleasant delight to see. And since I personally have been up here to complain about other things in the past, I wanted to take the opportunity for public comment to come and thank the community and thank y'all for listening and asking your questions to the fire department and giving them more resources to help the whole community and county. Thank you.
Other public comment? You ready for the question? The question is on the adoption of an ordinance approving the transfer of certain real property of Washington County to the city of Fayetteville for fire protection services. This ordinance is on, this is our 3rd reading? This is our third reading. Ms. Myra?
Patrick Deakins?
Yes.
Lisa Ecke? Sam Duncan? Chandra Washington?
Yes.
Eva Madison? Robert Dennis? Suki Hires? Evelyn Rio Stafford? Willie Lemming? Jim Wilson? Butch Pond? Lance Johnson?
Yes.
Shannon Marty? Sean Simons? Bill Usry? Pass.
This ordinance passes. Item 13, an ordinance calling for a special election in Washington County, Arkansas on the questions of issuing bonds under Amendment Number 62 to the Constitution of the State of Arkansas for the purpose of financing all or a portion of the cost of capital improvements, levying a new 0.25% sales and use tax for the purpose of retiring such bonds and prescribing other matters pertaining thereto. I move we pass this motion. Excuse me. This ordinance is on its first reading. Justice Deakins?
I make a motion that we suspend the rules and move this to a second reading.
We have a motion and a second to move this, to suspend the rules and move this to the second reading. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? No. Ms. Myra?
Patrick Deakins?
Yes.
Lisa Ecke? Sam Duncan? Chandra Washington?
No.
Eva Madison?
No.
Robert Dennis? Suki Hires? Evelyn Rio Stafford? Willie Lemming? Jim Wilson? Butch Pond? Lance Johnson?
Yes.
Shannon Marty? Sean Simons? Bill Usry? Will pass.
Okay. Should I read it again? An ordinance calling a special election in Washington County, Arkansas on the questions of issuing bonds under Amendment Number 62 to the Constitution of the State of Arkansas for the purpose of financing all or a portion of the cost of capital improvements, levying a new 0.25% sales and use tax for the purpose of retiring such bonds and prescribing other matters pertaining thereto. Justice Deakins?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to suspend the rule. I make a motion we suspend the rules and move this to a third and final reading.
We have a motion, a second by Butch Pond, to suspend the rules and move this to the third reading. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? No. Ms. Myra?
Patrick Deakins?
Yes.
Lisa Ecke? Sam Duncan? Chandra Washington?
No.
Eva Madison? Robert Dennis? Suki Hires? Evelyn Rio Stafford? Willie Lemming? Jim Wilson? Butch Pond? Lance Johnson?
Yes.
Shannon Marty? Sean Simons? Bill Usry? Pass.
Do I read it yet? An ordinance calling a special election in Washington County, Arkansas on the questions of issuing bonds under Amendment Number 62 to the Constitution of the State of Arkansas for the purpose of financing all or a portion of the cost of capital improvements, levying a new 0.25% sales and use tax for the purpose of retiring such bonds and prescribing other matters pertaining thereto. Justice Deakins?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we pass item number 13.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to pass site. Who seconded? Butch Pond. Okay, discussion. Justice Pond?
we probably don't want to forget, we're getting ready to vote on this. We're voting to allow the people of Washington County to vote for or against this ordinance, this sales tax, to pay to expand the jail. It seems like from some of the discussion up until now, people actually believed we were voting for the expansion ourselves, which we don't have the authority to vote for this sales tax. All we can do is allow the voters of Washington County to express their feeling on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is not a fill-in-the-blank election that we're putting on the ballot. This is not a, how many beds do you want? How do you want to pay for it? How much are you willing to pay? This court is being asked to endorse a very specific plan for a number of beds, for a specific cost, at a specific cost to the taxpayers. I don't know how many times that this court has put, very few times when I've been on the court, have we put a sales tax issue on the ballot, but most recently we did it for the radios, for the emergency services. I don't know how many people, I can't tell you how many people came up to me and said, well, I voted for that tax increase because I figured if the quorum court asked us to do it, that's what we needed to do. So putting it on the ballot isn't just us passing the buck to the taxpayers to have them pay. We are endorsing this concept of a massive expansion of our jail. And I want to say, I do not blame the sheriff one bit for coming to us. He has been sounding the alarm on the jail and the overcrowding conditions for quite a while. The last term's Jail and Law Enforcement Committee was given a proposal. I wasn't on the committee that term. They were given an option to expand the jail at that point. They wouldn't even let it out of committee to come to the full quorum court for a vote. Why? It was too much money. Let's do other things. Let's go pay for a criminal justice study that we paid for. How many things have we done from that? None. Very few. Yeah. I mean, we gave poor Judge Taylor a law clerk, and not even everybody could vote for it. But the point is that this court has done nothing for several years, not by my decision, but because the controlling powers have not allowed any solutions to be implemented for the jail other than just waiting and waiting and waiting and saying, well, we don't have another solution. We're going to have to expand the jail. That's what we're going to have to do. But what's most troubling to me is we're saying, let's let the taxpayers decide, but we have given them very little information. We are about to ask the taxpayers to pay $143 million that will take more than a decade to pay off, and we don't know very much. Is the $20+ million supposed COVID expansion with ARPA money still happening? That was going to add beds. Where's that? Nobody knows. When I asked in committee how we were going to pay to operate, nobody knows. When I asked in committee why the juvenile court building went from $4.5 million in 2020 to $28.5 million 2 years later, the answer was, well, the judge is not here and Brian Lester is sick. When the judge came and I asked him, I said, why did it go up so much? He said, well, I don't have the plans with me. The chief executive of the county can't answer a question about why something went up $24 million because he doesn't have the building plans in front of him. Then I said, well, why aren't we spending ARPA money on the juvenile court expansion? No answer. So I'm trying to figure out who exactly has come up with such an extensive 1,000-bed, $143 million plan when nobody knows what's in it. Nobody knows why we're doing it that way. And again, the judge is not here and Brian Lester is not here and nobody seems to care. So the one justification I've heard from this body in committee on why we need to do that is, well, the sheriff's constitutional duty is to operate the jail safely. Well, that's not our constitutional duty. Our constitutional duty is to be the legislative branch and to protect the taxpayers' money and to make sure that we're spending taxpayers' money wisely. To suggest that the legislative body should rubber stamp what the executive branch does or asks for is absurd. Let's think about this. If President Biden said to Congress, women should have rights over their own bodies, and Congress just said, okay, fine, okay, fine. That doesn't happen. That's not the way the executive and the legislative branches work together. We do not have to rubber stamp what comes to us from the executive branch. We are elected to serve the people and to spend their taxpayer dollars responsibly. And we are selling the taxpayers a pig and a poke on this one. We are saying, oh, it's only going to cost you 1/4 cent. But when the jail is built and we have to say, oh gosh, we need another 1/2 cent sales tax to run it, this county will have the highest sales tax rate in the state and probably the highest in the nation. Arkansas does not need that. We do not need that now. And this body has failed the community in not trying to do something to address the overcrowding at the jail short of a $143 million solution.
I had just a point of order. I don't think abortion and jail expansion have anything to do. And I don't agree. I just don't, you know what?
We need to have order.
I think we need to have order and civility. And I think it's easy to raise questions and ask, why do you always complain? Why do you always accuse people of not doing their job? Why do you always argue with everybody? Why do you always have a hateful attitude when you walk in the door? Why do you always get mad at everybody? Why do you always do this? You tell me that no. You always say that we as the body fail we fail the taxpayers, and we don't. So I'm asking.
Justice Ushery.
Thank you very much. There are a couple of things here that we need to take into consideration. One of them is Washington County is rapidly growing. This is going to take a minimum of 2 to 3 years for us to build. We're over our eyes now, and it's not going to get any better. We can put all these programs in place. Number one, they're going to take time. Number two, we're working on those programs. It takes time to find the people. It takes time to put all this together. It's going to take both. It's going to take working all over the pretrial stuff is what we need to be working on, but we also need to put the wheels in motion to build the new jail. Northwest Arkansas is growing at an exponential rate right now. Everybody around here, all the businesses, everybody is adding on, and they're taking preparations and they're preparing for the future. We wouldn't be where we are now if we would have done this a number of years ago. It takes a while. I've been on the court for quite some time. It takes a while to really fully understand how big a problem this is. But I can guarantee you that on $400 that somebody spends at the store, there's going to be $1 extra for this jail. And I'd like for you to explain to some of these people that have been hurt by people that have been in jail and jail and jail and jail, and they keep getting out on bond, and they keep becoming repeat offenders, and they should be in jail, but they're not because there's no room. It's hard to justify that. We need to do this. We need to put it to the voters, and we need to be sure that we listen to all the voices, which is a challenge as a JP for all of us, that we hear the loudest voices. They're here tonight, but we've got to listen to all the voices. And that, putting it before the voters, that's what we're gonna do, is listen to all the voters, all the voices. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll probably get some of my facts and figures wrong, and I apologize if I do, but approximately 7 years ago, I came and was elected to be on the court. And one of the first things I heard about was how the state paid us less money than what it cost to keep a state prisoner in her jail. And I said, well, that doesn't make sense. And I started pursuing it, and I remember Sheriff Helder said, please help me, because he couldn't get the money out of the state. And it's been that way for 7 years. Every state prisoner, every single day, 365 days a year, we lose money on. So you say, how can we fund it? Well, one thing we can do is start demanding, that we get paid what it costs to keep state prisoners. And then that money would go into helping pay for not only the cost of the jail, but the maintenance of the jail. And it takes some help to get that done, but I don't hear any of you talking to our state representatives and saying, how come you don't pay us for keeping your prisoners? And then the cities have to look at it. City of Fayetteville closed their jail. City of Springdale closed their jail. Who got to keep those prisoners based on what the state constitution says? Washington County gets to keep them, every single one of them. So do we get the kind of funding that we deserve from the cities to pay for the prisoners? You know, whether you're for them being there or not for them being there, we don't make the laws that put the people in prison. We make no laws that send someone to jail on this court. We don't do that. So if you want to take up whether or not someone should be or shouldn't be in jail, I'd say go back and study the golden rule, and also, thou shalt not steal and thou shalt not kill. I mean, those things are already established in society not to do. So why do people still do it? The only thing that you have is a jail, and at the same time, I've also heard on the street, four hots and a cot, I think that's what it's called, or 3 hots and a cot. That's where they get their 3 meals free. They get their cot to sleep on free. They get their medical help free. As soon as they get to jail, they can go to the hospital and get everything taken care of. So, we provide a tremendous amount. We provide them legal. Oh, they're shaking heads no. I thought we should provide them public defenders. We sure gave them an awful big increase for public defending this year. And then, well, at least we've got the judicial reform people taking care of all of them we miss then. And so a lot of money goes into the cost of a prisoner. I agree, a lot of them shouldn't be there, but I also don't think we ought to let them out and kill one of our officers in the convenience store either. I don't think that we should let them out on bail and go lay naked by someone's garden, and they got a 13-year-old girl. The neighbors have a 13-year-old girl. That happens. All that stuff happens, and you act like that it doesn't. It's in writing. It's in record. And you defend them all by making this broad stroke about how we don't do anything for them. I think that as a taxpayer, we pay a tremendous amount. And I'm sorry that you think that they should be treated better, but, step forward and make their lives better. Tell us what you're doing for them. How many times have you gone and paid their bail? A lot of you said that, they don't have the money to get out. If they had some money to get out, how come you don't collectively let someone out? And I'm saying too much, but I think the taxpayers deserve the right to say yes or no, and I'll be voting for it so that it'll be on the ballot so the taxpayers can make the decision, not a few. Thank you. A few of us or a few of you.
Justice Rio Stafford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had the opportunity to actually go on a tour of the jail last week, and I wanted to thank Chief Deputy Cantrell and Major Dinzer for spending several hours with me, touring the facility, answering 101 questions that I had, and kind of showing me what we're talking about. And I think apparently I'm one of the few JPs to actually go in and tour the jail. So I wish all 15 of us had done that. You're one of the few.
I've been there.
Yeah. The majority, yeah. Point of order. Point of order, I have the floor. No, I didn't ask a question, actually.
Okay, go ahead, continue.
It's not an accusation, please. Yes, the jail is overcrowded by Americans, by the way. And what? Because I hear it from the sheriff. But here's what I agree with. The medical facility is extremely crowded. It needs to be expanded. We need more negative pressure rooms. We need better medical care for the folks who are in the jail. The intake and release areas need to be separated. Those are the parts I agree with. And I don't fault the Sheriff's Department for making this ask. They're trying to solve a problem, and this is the only tool that they have to solve a problem that was created by the legislative branch. So here's what I disagree with. So no one denies that we're overcrowded by 125 people in that jail approximately right now. But this expansion that we're trying to put before the voters would give us 10 times that amount of space. What are we going to do with the 90% of the space? Is it just going to sit empty? I've been told that our local police agencies are being light on using the jail. What's going to happen when we have this cavernous empty space, supposedly, that's 90% empty? How long is it going to stay empty? Are we going to end up locking up people who are committing misdemeanors, people who are nonviolent? I'm concerned about that. What I've also heard, and what nobody disputes, is that most of the folks who are in the jail are there. The underlying reason is two things: drug addiction and mental health. And with drugs, it's mostly methamphetamine, fentanyl, and opioids. These are folks who need treatment. The Sheriff's Department agrees with that. The medical providers at the jail agree with that. They also agree that some of the folks in there with the mental health issues have no business being in the jail. They need to be in mental health facilities. These folks' mental health is deteriorating while they're in the jail. I saw some of them. But the facilities in Arkansas are full. They've told me that they make calls every single week to see if there's space. And the facilities that these folks really should be in don't exist in Washington County because we haven't funded them. That is what we should be doing with our American Rescue Plan funds. The Crisis Stabilization Unit, where we're supposed to be taking people who have a mental health crisis, it still isn't open. UAMS has told us they've had trouble hiring folks. That's what our American Rescue Plan funds are supposed to be for. Let's supplement those salaries like we did with the county staff. Otherwise, we're sending these folks either to the jail or the emergency room, and neither one of them is the right option. There's no sobering center in this county. We're asking the jail staff to be the sobering center because there isn't one. It's an expensive option. We've had 2 years to fund every item in the criminal justice assessment for a lot less money than this bond would cost. Instead, we've sat here on in our easy chairs here for 2 years, these padded chairs. We put the CARES Act money into the reserves instead of using it to do the things that we were told would help. That criminal justice study told us that jail was the most expensive option for these folks. But we're the ones who opted to do nothing. So now we are facing the most expensive option. We need to get more resources to the courts, the prosecutors, and the public defender to get through the backlog of cases. We're violating people's civil rights right now by making them sit in jail pre-trial for so long. But again and again, there's people on this quorum court, and they did it again tonight, and in committees, who vote against funding our courts at every single turn. The law clerk position that we voted on tonight, it almost didn't make it through the budget committee. We made our juvenile judges last year grovel for money instead of fully funding both of those courts. It was insulting and embarrassing to our juvenile judges. We're so busy trying to pinch pennies on the front end that now we are asking you, the taxpayers, for dollars on the back end.
Justice Rios Stafford, could you wrap it up? You've had 6 minutes, ma'am.
Okay. The vast majority of my constituents who've contacted me have asked me to vote against this. It's probably going to pass tonight, with or without me. So if you feel passionately about this, I want you to get to the ballot box in November.
Justice Simmons.
Thank you, Chair. Sheriff-elect Cantrell, I hate to put you on the spot, but if you're still here, back in the back, could you come up here and answer a quick question?
Would you address it here? Your question.
Okay, I have a question. How many people do we let out of the jail per month?
Between 3 and 4 months.
Okay, thank you.
Other comments? Okay. Before we take up the question, we've got a 15-minute a 12-minute public comment period. Each person can speak for 3 minutes. Public comment.
We have pro and con, for and against.
First speaker.
Anna Stitt from West Fork, where I grew up. I just want to say a lot of people tonight have been talking about as Northwest Arkansas grows, the expansion of the jail is inevitable. Can you hear me? Yes, okay. I have 2 friends who each have struggled with addiction. They have each had to do 10 days in the Washington County Jail. They were not a public safety threat at that time. It was pre-scheduled. They knew that it was coming. They made their plan. They went and checked themselves in. And my sense is that that's a lot of the people who are there. One of them lost his job. The other was able to negotiate. His attorney knew the judge and he got less time and was able to keep his job. They both struggled to pay rent when they got back out. It was a very destabilizing thing for them. They came home more vulnerable, more traumatized. My sister is a criminology professor at one of the top-ranked programs in the country. She studies addiction and incarceration, and we know empirically that incarceration does not help people with addiction. It actually is a very highly destabilizing thing, and it creates a loop. And so I feel like this is a moment, and when we need to think about public safety as we grow as a community, and incarceration, and specifically this jail, actually will make us all less safe. I think we need to be thinking about some of the things in this recommendation packet. We need to be thinking about public housing, about transportation, education, childcare, all of the things that we need, mental health care. I know that I have a friend who came home from prison and almost killed his girlfriend. Like, I feel less safe when people are traumatized, when people are unstable, when people don't have what they need. I'm more likely to be robbed. I'm more likely, I want us to think about what a safe society looks like, and it doesn't look like more people in the jail. I was reading through Sheriff Helder's Q&A, and he said that we release 200 people a month due to overcrowding, and if we didn't have people from other counties, the beds would stay full because we would have those 200 people still there. It's highly arbitrary who is in the prison, who is in the jail, the county jail. And it isn't a public safety question. It's a question of what the bureaucracy has and what we're asking people to do, and it's a destabilizing thing that is making us all less safe. So I really ask, in the name of my safety, that we think more creatively about what we put on the ballot, what we give people, and we don't deal in fear. Thank you.
My name is Brandon Gallagher from Prairie Grove. I emailed all of you recently. Thank you, Justice Rios Stafford, Justice Washington, and Justice Dennis for your considerate replies. I was raised in a law enforcement household. I was raised by police officers. My mother worked in the Washington County Jail. I, from age 12 to 14, was in a sexually inappropriate relationship with a Washington County police officer who lived next door to me. I was abused by my mother while she was working at the Washington County Jail. I was abused by my stepfather while he was a police officer. The children of their coworkers were also regularly abused, and we all knew that there was nothing we could do about any of this, because who do you call when the abusers are the ones who can throw you in jail and the abusers are the ones who run the jails? If we are going to expand jails, we are also going to expand a culture of people who behave in accordance with the Stanford prison experiment. We know how people who feel empowered to oppress others will behave. We are talking about proposing a plan that will expand this culture of feeling like Washington County residents are less than human by the people who have authority over them. I would ask that we give that sincere consideration, particularly when proposing this to be on the ballot for Washington County residents to decide on, because I believe that most Washington County residents do not understand that this is law enforcement culture. It has been since the beginning of slave patrol in Kentucky, when law enforcement was first created and where its roots came from. And I think some of the public comment earlier about who the criminals are presents evidence that many Washington County residents clearly do not understand where real crimes are happening in Washington County. If we are not addressing the crimes that are happening within our law enforcement system and the blue code of silence that protects that and that keeps people quiet about the things that they know are going on behind closed doors in law enforcement families, how are we going to expand this within Washington County and expect to have safe and healthy families and societies?
Hello, my name is Isabel. I grew up here in Fayetteville, and I still live here in Fayetteville. I wanted to start by saying that, frankly, some of the talk about our fellow human beings that I heard on this court tonight was disturbing. I'm not a criminal, not because I'm afraid of going to jail, but because I have food to eat, and I have money to pay for that food. I can go home to my bed tonight because I can afford rent. I have the resources to stay out of jail. I have the choice to live or abide by the law, or I don't have to make that choice, right? I choose to stay within the system because I have that choice, I have that privilege. Not everybody does. This crime is not the disease itself, it's a symptom of the disease, and the disease is this rotten system. Look at the fruits that this system is bearing. That fruit is rotten. It's not working. Apparently, we clearly have abusers in our line of defense. I don't want to be defended by anybody who's going home and abusing their family. Yeah, maybe some people want to go to jail for 3 hots and a cot. It's because it's really hard to get one out in the real world these days, in case you didn't know. So, maybe have some more empathy, some more compassion. Maybe actually look at the systemic reasons as to why people commit crime. And it's not because they want to. It's not because they want to be criminals. That's not how it works. It's not. Do you sit at home and think, oh, as if the law disappeared, I would just go and do whatever I wanted? Everybody wants anarchy. That's ridiculous. Most people want to be safe and taken care of.
Hello, friends. April Backroat, Springdale, Arkansas. I have two things to say. One is we as nonprofits have been asking for years for support, for an application for funding, and we have gotten nowhere other than how much does your program cost? What is the return on investment? But you are not putting that same level of scrutiny back on this jail expansion project, which is far more than anything any of us who are actually in the community working with these vulnerable populations are asking you for. As someone who writes grants, because that's what we do to sustain our nonprofits, because we're not getting any funding from our county to support our community members and those in need, we have to have a sustainability plan. I can't even ask for $500 without writing a full sustainability and evaluation plan. And here you are allocating over $100 million with none of that. And you're putting scrutiny back on us, and you're worried about how we as nonprofits might use these funds. Please turn the mirror on yourself. Give the nonprofits an opportunity to apply for funding so we can do something more than expand our jail to solve the problems that are impacting our community. One solution I have that is a county service, since that has been a point of focus, is the Public Defender's Office. Please expand the Public Defender's Office. Give them more resources. Before I was here, I was meeting with a client who was crying. She's been with us for over a year. She's from Madison County, which is a little rough. She's being prosecuted for non-child support that she has been paying since she came into our program. We are on month 9 of trying to resolve this case because her public defender is overworked and under-resourced and keeps having to ask for continuances because they don't have time to pull her case together. This is a felony charge that could impact everything she has worked so hard to rebuild. And what we just heard a few days ago, she's been assigned to a new public defender a week before court. And she's scared out of her mind that everything she has worked for is going to be undone. So if we have to find a county service to fund, can we at least adequately fund our public defender's office? Thank you.
Great, thank you. Hi, Aaron Howerton, Springdale, candidate for JP District 4. Mr. Lance, would you please ask for an extension of public comments so we can make sure we have everybody else a chance to speak? I can only address you, so I'm not sure who else to ask. If we've made a previous passage to look for more time. We don't even just 12 minutes. We'll all try to go fast, I promise. Ms. JP Washington would... There's just not a lot of point in me talking if I can't. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that we extend, I can't see how many people are back there. 6?
We promised to go fast.
He
You
said
guys
it.
go fast?
I move that we extend the public comment by 21 minutes to allow everyone in line 3 minutes to speak.
Comment. We have a motion to extend public comment by 21 minutes. Is there a second? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? No. Motion carries. We're extended by 21 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Lance. I have lived in Arkansas most of my life, and when I was a kid, local politics wasn't that interesting to me. But as I've become an adult and I've gotten involved here, I have a degree in political science as well, and when I left that degree, I was really kind of sad about what the eventual state of all countries and powers is. So I didn't really get involved. And for almost 20 years now, my privilege has allowed me to ignore the political process. Privilege being defined as no matter what I do, what I vote for, what I support, my life doesn't inherently change by the outcome of any given election. That's how I'm defining privilege here. I've lived in that privilege for a long time. And over the past year, I've been pulled into local politics. And I want to tell you, living in a democratic republic is exciting. This is some of the most exciting stuff that I have seen in years. This is an exciting night. And if you don't feel that tension and that passion, then I don't think you're alive tonight. Clearly, people are passionate about what we're talking about. But I will push back on the notion that this is a vote for the people, because I think this is the most politically expedient path for most of the JPs on this court. Because if you put a tax out there and you're part of the GOP, that's not GOP platform. But if you give it as a vote and the people pass it, now it's their responsibility. But the people will absolutely see this on the ballot and assume that there is a thoughtful vetting behind the plan. So if this passes, that's great. It's going to go to a vote. My count today is 10-1. So as long as people show up and vote, if they go to the box, we're fine. This is going to get trashed at the polls, and I'm excited about November. That being said, if you do vote, also vocalize. Tell people what you really think. If you're listening, my wife, she's out there, whoever's watching tonight, vote, vocalize, and volunteer, and we can change this county and this state for the better. We do not have to keep marching toward the future that is scary, that is ridden by a police state. We can change the future, but you have to keep doing what all these people are doing. Thank you, I'm done. Sorry I wasn't as quick.
Hello, first of all, I'd like to say thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Sarah Hampton. I live in District 1. So one thing that I wanted to bring to point is that this will take money out of the pockets of our families who already struggle in the economy that we have to put gas in their cars and groceries on their tables. The combined state and local sales tax in Arkansas is already among the top 5 highest of all 50 states, with Arkansas averaging out at 9.48%. As many of you are aware, most cities in our county are already above that, with Washington County averaging at 10.07%. An additional 0.25% will bump the average to 10.23. What are we doing to support our families during this? How can we justify placing an excess burden at this time, with the cost of living being disproportionately high when we can't control inflation at a national level? Why burden our families in the areas we can control? This doesn't even touch on how jail services disproportionately affect folks who are lower income, going to the root cause of why people are taken into jail. It all boils down to financial insecurity and instability and mental illness. Focusing our resources on a jail expansion is like going to the doctor for a broken leg and going home with some Tylenol to manage the pain instead of a cast and crutches. Let's stop robbing the poor to hurt the poor. Let's just help and love our neighbors and keep the money in the pockets of our families that matter. Thank you.
Good night. My name is Ryan J. Fortner. I grew up in Springdale, but I currently live in Fayetteville. First off, I'd like to thank y'all for taking the time to listen to us and give us the opportunity to speak. The first thing I'd like to touch on is tonight, when I hear people speaking against this, I hear them citing credible sources and college studies. But when I hear people speaking for it, I hear the old scare book playbook that the educated now realize to be disinformation without citing a single source or scientific study. While I was outside of this room, I couldn't come in here, but I could hear one of you had said that you had gone on a tour of the jail, and you tried to say that yes, it is overcrowded and that it's mostly Americans locked up, and one of you had interrupted them, asking them how they knew. And I'd like to say I've been in that jail. I've been booked into that county jail multiple times. I've been sent to prison. All of my charges are marijuana related, so every bit of this is something that this county is now making millions on. But I am now a felon for the rest of my life. My life is ruined. I have no opportunities, and all doors are closed to me. I heard somebody mention something about 3 hots in a cot, like that was a good thing. And it's not a good thing. I've never once ever heard anybody say that in a serious manner. It's used in a sarcastic manner and as a joke. I've even said it recently to my wife because of the struggles where we're facing being homeless. We had a story recently on the news, you might have seen us, where we live in an apartment that's filled with sewage. and we're on the brink of becoming homeless. So I said to her, well, maybe I should just screw up my parole and go back to prison. At least I'll get 3 hots and a cot there. You asked him how he knew, then if you want to ask somebody, ask me. You guys have labeled me a criminal, and I just want to provide for my family. I don't want to expand this jail. We obviously don't have an overcrowding problem. Yes, it's overcrowded, but we have a systemic problem. When you have cancer, you don't treat it with Tylenol or ibuprofen. You get in there and you cut out the cancer. You deal with the root issue. If we just put a Band-Aid over this, then 10 years down the road, obviously, we're going to have to expand again. The jail that we're staying in right now isn't that old. I'm only 30 years old, and I can remember when we built this jail. We're just going to keep building more and more? I mean, when does it stop? I guess that's all I got to say. Thank you for your time.
My name is Billy. I'm a resident of Fayetteville, and I gladly look forward to seeing the residents of Washington County reject this ill-advised and economically progressive expansion in November. I know that working families will be most impacted by this sharp increase in taxes. Low-income residents of Washington County are already disproportionately incarcerated, and now they will be forced to foot the bill for their own detention. Comments were made earlier in this meeting about the need to accommodate mass migration and alleged waves of criminals across the southern border. Statements like that are factually incorrect, backward, and do not reflect the meaning and welcoming community that generations of people in Northwest Arkansas have striven to create. We must challenge and reject these statements at every turn. We know of clear, proven programs of public safety that address the root causes of crime. In addition to that, they are proven to be cheaper. We need a compassionate approach to criminal justice that does not shun the poor, homeless, or those struggling with mental illness. We must require leaders that have equal compassion and humanity to do that. Thank you.
Tim Bell, Fayetteville. Good evening. I've sat in here and I heard the 3 hots in a cot comment, and I just couldn't get over that. I just couldn't believe the lack of empathy here. It was shocking to me. I didn't intend on speaking tonight, but I was moved to simply because of that. I would like for you all to consider that these are people. They have real lives and people that depend on them. You know, 3 hots in a cot, that's just not the way to look at a person who's possibly struggling with things that you may not understand. I'd really appreciate it if this body would take seriously the reports that have been presented to it tonight. And I hope you all can keep an open mind when thinking about solutions to the problems that dog our community. Thank you so much.
Sherry Ringler, Fayetteville. Most of my talking points have been repeated over and over and over here, so I'm not going to do that. But I just really want to say that I think creating this jail is creating sort of a system where we're going to have a self-fulfilling prophecy. If we have that many beds open, why not fill them? That's the purpose, right? To fill the beds. Are we going to invest in that? Or are we going to invest in human beings in the community who are suffering? So many are suffering for so many reasons, poverty being a huge part, which leads to drug addiction in a lot of cases, which causes mental health issues. We're not addressing those. Why aren't we? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again, not trying something new. Why were these studies paid for if we're not going to heed them?
Hello there. Sophia Dugweiler, Fayetteville. I think that most of you guys know how invested I am in this conversation. Earlier today, I took a little bit of time to jot down some of my thoughts on the jail expansion. I'd like to share those with you. First of all, I think that we all have a similar vision for this county, to create a culture where people are healthy and prosperous, a growing economy that is innovative and sustainable, and then the infrastructure that we need. I'm sorry, I have a hard time following the notes. And then the infrastructure that we need to meet the needs of that growing population. Doesn't that sound about right? Okay. As Washington County's population grows, many things will change. There may be a correlation between a higher population and higher crime rates. And maybe the most elementary solution seems like adding more beds to house more criminals. But these so-called criminals are county residents. We are the tax-paying citizens who have elected you guys to serve us. In my experience, people commit crimes because they have needs that are not being met. Now, we can boil down these most basic human needs, such as food, shelter, and healthcare, or we could look a little bit more to more abstract ideas, such as respect, opportunity, and connection. Anybody can experience any one of these hardships and act out, making mistakes or committing crimes. Some people will cycle in and through our county jail as the result. Many of the people who stay, who are housed long-term in this jail, are people who either cannot afford to be released on bail and are pre-trial, supposedly innocent until proven guilty, or are people who have underlying issues going unaddressed. When somebody sits in our county jail, their entire lives are being disrupted. They may lose their home, car, job, or all three. Many of their families suffer in their absence. They are denied essential health care and stabilizing medications. A person might sit in jail for weeks, months, or even up to a year just to accept a plea bargain that is unfair and unnecessary, simply because they've had enough and wish to move on with their lives. Then they are released worse off than when they started. I've personally spoken to or corresponded with over 130 women this year alone who have been through the criminal justice system either previously or who are currently incarcerated, and they're all seeking something different and want something better for their lives. I've only been able to accept 3 into our program this year. Everyone else, I've tried desperately to refer them outside of the county, away from families and remnants of standing support systems. Washington County has 1 8-bed facility for women seeking supportive housing and long-term treatment. We only have 1 men's facility in the entire county also. Every person in this room has been affected by addiction or incarceration in one way or another. Imagine if your loved one got the help that they needed.
Thank you. My name is Jaden Atkins. I'm a local attorney, and I live and work in Springdale. I've had the opportunity to work with some of your most vulnerable of constituents. I worked for 2 years as a law clerk at the Washington County Public Defender's Office, and I've worked now almost 2 years as an attorney for low-income folks in our community. I can confirm that many of our neighbors in our local jail are already there for very minor offenses, and they're often stuck there for months simply because they cannot afford to pay for bail. And I can confirm that, as many of the bases that Justice Rios Stafford mentioned, the jail does need to be improved, but this is just simply not the way. We live in a representative democracy. People have put their trust in you as their legislators to make the best decisions for them. And our most vulnerable in the community are included in that. They are also your constituents. When you pass a sales tax, which will disproportionately affect our most vulnerable neighbors, you are failing those constituents. When you pass a plan such as this that has such a huge expense without a way to pay for it, going on into the future, you are failing those constituents. Please do not pass this. People count on you to review these plans and make a decision that is going to best help people. They do not know, looking at a sheet of paper when they go to a ballot box, what they are signing on to. They depend on you for that. Please do not pass this bill. Thank you.
Nancy White, I'm a resident in Fayetteville, Arkansas. Before I became a resident in Fayetteville, Arkansas, I became a church council. Before I actually moved into Fayetteville, I began to serve on the church council of Good Shepherd Lutheran Church. And every day, we receive several emails about people that can't afford to live in Washington County. To add more taxes to the people that can't afford to live here already and don't have options to move, to relocate to places where the rent doesn't average $1,000 plus, is just to add more and more to the disparity that leads people to be arrested, to be put into jail, to need those 3 hots in a cot. My professional experience is in early childhood, and there's a lot to be said about what Ms. Stitt said about the disparity about putting someone into jail. Whenever you put a child into timeout, there's a lot of social anxiety created in that child just by removing them from play with other children. And those are things that we're not addressing. We put people into jail, but then we don't give them the resources to step back into society. A couple of people who have spoken here have experienced jail time, and they talked about ruining their lives. It ruins your credit because you can't work for that period of time. It ruins your availability to provide for your family or to help whoever is providing for your family. It creates disparity in your children. There's a long-term effect of separating someone from society. And if we don't give them the resources, then they are going to be repeat offenders, and they are going to spend more time trying to make adjustments that don't fit into the box that we call correct society.
Hi, my name is Jane. I'm from Springdale. I wanted to check in with Mr. JP Robert Dennis about a couple of the things that you brought up. Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Johnson, I wanted to just discuss a couple more things. Did you say something else? Oh, no. Okay. I donate to a nonprofit in Fayetteville called the Bail Project that helps pay bond for people who can't afford bond, and it helps them get out before trial. So that is something that I have some friends that work there. It's a great nonprofit, so supporting people to not have to stay incarcerated while they're waiting for trial. Another thing that I do with my husband, we're respite parents for foster homes, and we don't want kids being traumatized by people going around naked. And I mean, I don't think that any of us are wanting little kids traumatized by people. I think that there's a lot of other options that wouldn't have to be incarceration, that are options to be visited that wouldn't mean, causing a community of people who are going around doing things that they shouldn't be doing. Also, I am someone who has tended to trust the Quorum Court to really check out things before you put it on the ballot for us as voters, and I really would love for you to visit all the options, because I'm someone who, when I see this on the ballot, I'm like, well, I hate to pay more taxes, but I'll do it because I trust that y'all have evaluated all the options and found this to be the best option. I think in this case, I really wish you would give us more time. For example, the thing about the state paying full price for people incarcerated, if that were a way to fund our county jail, I'll contact my state representatives now. I do reach out to them, but please visit every other alternative before putting this on the ballot for us, because that's something that we trust y'all to do for us, is to really, try to look into every other alternative, especially before putting something for $120 million on the ballot, that without looking through every other option that we already paid for, like through this study.
Thank you. Public comment period is over. The question is on agenda item 13. It's on its third and final reading. It's an ordinance calling a special election in Washington County, Arkansas on the question of issuing bonds under Amendment 62 to the Constitution of the State of Arkansas for the purpose of financing all or a portion of the cost of capital improvements, levying a new 0.25% sales and use tax for the purpose of retiring such bonds and prescribing other matters pertaining thereto. Ms. Myra.
Patrick Deakins,
Yes.
Lisa Ecke, Sam Duncan, Chandra Washington,
No.
Eva Madison,
No.
Robert Dennis, Suki Hires, Evelyn Rio Stafford, Willie Lemming, Jim Wilson, Butch Pond, Lance Johnson,
Yes.
Shannon Marty, Sean Simons, Bill Usry,
The ordinance is adopted.
Nobody did their thing.
Item 14 are the committee reports, county services. Justice Duncan.
Due to the holiday and how the calendar fell, we will meet on the 28th of this month.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The report from this month's meetings in the packet. We will start additional budget meetings next week.
Okay, the jail and law enforcement, the report's in the packet. Personnel, Justice Ecke. Thank you. Without objection, this meeting's adjourned. Damn.